Now, Mark wasted no time in launching Jesus' ministry of teaching and healing. Last Sunday, we heard 4 different stories of healing that make the second half of chapter 1 and the first half of chapter 2 that particular endeavor. Mark then shifts the focus of the story to the growing uneasiness amongst the religious, quote, authorities, unquote. Mark shows us another side to Jesus, still rooted in compassion, that refuses to obey the religious laws each time those laws compromise a person's well-being. Jesus chooses wisdom rather than blind obedience to a belief system. And the Pharisees grow more fearful with each new way that Jesus challenges the status quo. And this passage that I'm about to read ends with a foreshadow of the violence that will ultimately take Jesus' life. Reading from this element of Mark 2:13 and right through to 3, part 6, we find. Jesus went out again beside the sea. The whole crowd gathered around him and he taught them. And as he was walking along, he saw Levi, son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax booth. And he said to him, "Follow me." And Levi got up and followed him. And as Jesus sat at dinner in Levi's house, many tax collectors and sinners were also sitting with Jesus and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. As an aside, it's fascinating, isn't it, that they equate tax collectors and sinners? When the scribes and the Pharisees saw that he was eating with sinners and tax collectors, they said to his disciples, "Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners?" And when Jesus heard this, he said to them, "Those who are well have no need for a physician, but those who are sick. And I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners." Now, John the Baptist's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting, and the people came and said to Jesus, "Why do John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?" And Jesus said to them in this way, "The wedding guests cannot fast while the bridegroom is with them, can they? As long as they have the bridegroom with them, they cannot fast. The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and they will fast on that day. No one sews a piece of unshrunk cloth to an old cloak. Otherwise, the patch pulls away from it, and the new from the old, and a new tear is the result. And no one puts new wine in old wineskins. Otherwise, the wine will burst the skins, and the wine is lost, and so are the skins. But one does put new wine in fresh wineskins." One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and as they made their way, his disciples began to pluck heads of grain. And the Pharisees said to him, as you heard in the earlier story, "Look, why are they doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath?" And Jesus said to them, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need of food? He entered the house of God when Abiathar was high priest and ate the bread of the presence, which is not lawful for any but for the priests to eat. And he gave some even to his companions." And then Jesus said to them, "The Sabbath was made for humankind, not humankind for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even on the Sabbath." Then again Jesus entered the synagogue, and a man was there who had a withered hand. The Pharisees watched him to see if he would heal on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him. And he said to the man who had the withered hand, "Come forward." Then he said to the Pharisees, "Is it lawful to do good or harm on the Sabbath, to save a life or to kill?" But they were silent. He looked around them with anger, and he said he was grieved at their hardness of heart. And then he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." And he stretched it out, and his hand was restored. The Pharisees went out then and immediately conspired with the Herodians against him as to how they might destroy him. Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church.
Thanks be to God.